So about how to become a funeral director. Well, I can't speak to every state because every state has its own protocol and standards. I am licensed in Pennsylvania. So the Pennsylvania requirements, one nice thing about Pennsylvania is the license is a dual funeral director and embalmer license. There are some states like California where you can either get the funeral director license or the embalmer license or both. In Pennsylvania, it's a dual license, so you do that course of study, you learn it all, and I mean everything. You do your internship, and when you're licensed, you are legally able to do both sides of the profession. So in Pennsylvania, there are only 2 schools in the state with accredited mortuary science programs. I happen to go to Northampton Community College because I live in the eastern side of the state. And for Northampton, it is a 2-year, technically kind of a 3-year program if you don't have prior credits, for an associate's in applied science and funeral service education. Now for me, because I already had a bachelor's degree, I was able to have a lot of my credits transferred over for the gen eds, because something people don't realize, again, spoiler alert, when you go to mortuary school, it's not just learning how to embalm, it's not just learning how to sell a casket. You have to do general education to prepare you for the funeral core. So you're going to be taking biology classes, you're going to be taking law classes, you're going to be taking communication, religion. I actually have my list right here. You have to take mathematics classes. You have to take accounting. Accounting is usually a requirement. You have to take business leadership classes, chemistry, and psychology, and sociology, and microbiology. And those are the, and apologies there, my camera cut off a little bit. So as I was saying, all the sciences, the maths, the basic law, communications, those are all base general education classes that people need to have as the foundation to get into the funeral program itself, because the funeral service education program builds on all of that. You build on the law by then learning mortuary law, federal laws, and state laws. You learn about the Federal Trade Commission, which is in place to protect the consumer. This is actually what prevents funeral directors from the old stereotype of the vultures overselling and preying on people's emotions. No, we don't really do that. All right, I can't speak for all funeral directors, but all the homes I've worked at, and myself, like especially myself, because I am not an upseller at all, is there are federal guidelines in place to protect people from being snookered, as it were, into unnecessary purchases. So you learn all about FTC and federal programs and VA benefits, and you do a lot with Social Security because funeral directors notify Social Security, and we kind of have to know what happens once that death claim is filed, because the families have questions about lump sum payouts, who's eligible for payouts, will my spouse's payments, you know, monthly payments continue, what do we have to do? Funeral directors kind of counsel and guide on all of that. So you learn all of that from the law aspect and from federal regulation aspect. Funeral classes also include pathology, because guess what? You're going to be working with a lot of different conditions and cases. Side note, as an example, I once embalmed somebody who had passed from necrotizing fasciitis, which is flesh-eating bacteria. And this person was missing a rather large portion of their leg from the infection, from the bacteria eating away all the flesh, causing the surrounding flesh around it to die. So a lot of surgeries had been done to try to contain and eliminate the infection, but unfortunately, it didn't work, obviously, because I was working on this person in the prep room. And you have to know a lot about the different diseases because they will impact not only your own safety, You should be using universal precautions regardless, as far as gloves and gowns and masks and all that. But you have to know how certain diseases affect the body, because that's going to change how you embalm them, because different medications and different conditions are going to have different reactions with the fluids that you're using. This is why you do chemistry as a gen ed, because you don't just dump a bunch of formaldehyde into a tank and pump it through. You've got water softeners, you've got humectants, you've got active dyes, you've got the formaldehydes, you've got glutaraldehyde in case you have somebody who had jaundice, because jaundice turns you yellow, but formaldehyde will combine with the bilirubin, which is what turns the skin yellow. It will combine and form biliverdin, which is something that, it's green. It's a chemical, a biochemical, turns your skin green. So you have to know chemistry, you have to know microbiology, you have to know anatomy and physiology, because you're going to be raising various veins, whether it's the carotid and the jugular, which is the most common, most known veins that are used, or vascular structures that are used. Also femoral, in the arms, in the elbow, in the wrist, subclavicular, I can't remember what the popliteal, around behind the knee, because embalming is a it's an art as much as it is a science. And when people have different medical conditions, things like diabetes or arteriosclerosis or arthritis too can even be a compounding factor. If they're edematous, if they've had certain medications or chemotherapies, then that's all going to impact how well you're able to flush the blood out of the system, and how well the embalming fluid mixture that you have created is going to permeate into the tissue and restore their appearance to something a little more lifelike, something that people would be comfortable viewing, and as well as slowing down the decomposition process. So you have to know a lot of anatomy, you have to know a lot of chemistry, you have to know pathology. You also learn restorative art, which is the whole field of reconstructing trauma cases, is what people typically think of. Like if there's a car accident and a lot of bones are shattered, or there's a gunshot wound and it needs to be covered up, that's when you learn how to basically rebuild a face and cosmetize it so that it looks natural, so that you can't tell that something very, very, very physically traumatic happened to that person. It's also basic things like just normal cosmetology, because even when you embalm somebody, for instance, their lips might still have a little bit of a grayish or a pale tinge to them, and they might be deflated because they're old and they were on a ventilator for, you know, God knows how long. So the body suffers enough trauma in life that can carry over after, in death. So you have to do restorative things in embalming, like reconstruct the lips, kind of like, do lip injections, filling in the temples, giving, making the cheeks a little more 3D again so they're not sunken and sallow and hollow, filling in the hands, because when people get very aged and very emaciated, the skin between your bones sinks in, so you see the bones sticking out, and that can be very jarring, and that can be a little nerve-wracking, especially if the people coming to the service haven't seen that person in several years, so they aren't aware of the deterioration that has taken place in the final years. So you do a lot of just basic cosmetology like that too, how to do highlights and cover up bruises and cover up all kinds of things. Oh, you also do funeral home operations, which is basically how to start a business, how to run a business, how to deal with personnel issues, how to deal with the legal issues, how to do the accounting issues, how to do merchandising. You learn every single part of a casket. You learn, outside and inside. You learn everything there is to know about urns. You learn everything there is to know about register books and vaults and grave liners and memory glass pendants and cremation jewelry. All these things are things that people either need or request. So you take classes on what they are, why we use them, what the different materials are, the different structures and features and functions and bells and whistles. You do philosophy classes on death and dying, because again, you're dealing with bereaved people. You do a psychology class on responding to the bereaved. What am I missing here? Of course, the embalming classes and clinical embalming. Embalming is a theory, the lecture. The clinical is where you're actually embalming people, usually as a group. Actually, I think I covered most of it as far as the classes go. It's pretty involved. And after you complete the classes, before you graduate, and this is nationwide, you have to take the National Board Exam in Funeral Service. The National Board Exam is two parts. There's two exams. One is the arts, one is the sciences. The arts contains general knowledge, law, business, accounting, that kind of thing, philosophy, psychology, sociology. It also includes funeral-specific arts such as merchandising, funeral home operations, funeral law, FTC regulations, religion, the different religions and customs and fraternal organizations and veterans benefits. All of these things are part of just the umbrella of funeral service. Then you take the sciences exam. That one is the one that is anatomy and physiology, chemistry, biology, microbiology, embalming, restorative art, pathology. Just to give you an idea, this is my National Board Exam study guide. This is basically the comprehensive, the ultimate comprehensive review of everything that's learned in mortuary school, along with practice questions to take and glossaries, because there's so much terminology. After you pass your board exams and you graduate, then in Pennsylvania you do a 1-year internship, and that's when you work with a preceptor, and that's when you actually learn how to be a funeral director. Mortuary school programs are very good at teaching theory and at teaching the basics and teaching you what you need to know in order to pass the board exams, but it's hard to actually teach how to be a funeral director until you're, doing those 1:30 a.m. calls to the nursing home, in adverse weather conditions after having worked a 12-hour day and having to go back in for another 9-hour day, at 8 a.m., even though you've been out half the night doing removals and you're meeting with the family, basically everything I covered before. Your internship is when you actually learn how to do that. That's when you learn how to file the paperwork, how to fill out the death certificates, the disposition permits, the VA forms, the Social Security forms, and filling out insurance paperwork for people who had pre-funded funerals, and drawing up new insurance paperwork if you're going to be doing pre-need funeral planning with families, how to build clergy relations, how to, interact, how to coordinate things with the clergy, with the church, with the organist and vocalist and sexton and whoever else is going to be involved in the service, and the cemetery and the vault company and the casket company, and creating all the materials you need, like the memorial folders or prayer cards. There's a lot involved. There's so much to it. It really is a jack of all trades kind of thing, because you're part office manager, part, insurance paperwork processor, part, federal employee, because you're doing all this federal paperwork that you're putting in, the state paperwork that you're putting in, part counselor, part scientist, mad scientist in the back room making people look good again. It's a very comprehensive profession, and it's a wonderful profession. I really do love doing it. After you've completed your internship, or at least at some point during that year-long internship in Pennsylvania, then you have to take the Pennsylvania State Boards. Once again, it's a 2-part exam with the arts and with sciences, except, well, arts and science, and then there's the jurisprudence section, which is specific to Pennsylvania funeral law. So there's a lot that you have to go through in order to become a funeral director. All the schooling, the internship, national board exams, 2 of them, state board exams, 2 of them, submitting all your internship paperwork, the cases that you've worked on, because you are required to get so many embalmings done during your internship, and you do so many arrangements with the families, you do so many pre-need things with the families. You have to send all that paperwork into the State Board of Funeral Service and have them review it, make sure you've met all the criteria, all the boards are passed, and then you get your license. And then it's a whole new scary world because you don't have a preceptor by your side. And you're out there, you're the one actually doing everything, and it's scary and it's wonderful and it's really heartbreaking, but it's really rewarding too. As I said in the beginning of the video, one great thing about being a funeral director, again, misconception, you can have a personality. You can, as long as it's appropriate. I would always get a read with the family first and kind of build a rapport before I would start cracking jokes or making little sides or whatnot. But you can be a normal human being. You don't have to be, you know, that really soft spoken and, you know, just hugs and I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. There are families that respond much better to, yeah, this really sucks. I hate that you're going through this, and this really sucks. You know, not everybody needs to be coddled. There are some people who just, they would rather try to just deal with it as another thing. Then you get families who are super broken up about it and need the tender, you know, the careful, gentle handling. But it's okay to laugh with the families. It's okay to make them laugh. And on the flip side, it's also okay to cry with them. There have been times when I have started crying in the arrangements because some of the stories are telling me, like, and the heartbreak that they are so obviously feeling. I have cried at services. I have been choked up and crying while trying to do the closing announcements at the graveside, because sometimes you really do bond with the family. And the biggest regret and the hardest part about this job is that you never got the chance to meet that person. No, sometimes when you're sitting there listening to these stories and getting to know this family and seeing how everybody is reacting at the service, it hits you hard that I really wish I had the chance to meet this person because they sounded amazing. And that's really the hardest part. Yes, the crazy long work hours, the no social life, the no benefits and low compensation suck. The dealing with horrific medical issues sucks. Emotional drama, fighting families and internal fighting within the office, that can suck. But the worst part about it, for me, the hardest part about funeral directing would be hearing about these phenomenal people and knowing that I missed out on a chance to hear some really great perspectives and great stories and learn more about the history of who we are and how we got here. So that's why I kind of make it a point now whenever I'm out and about. If somebody seems up for talking, I like to chat them up. I like to try to get some stories out of everybody I meet. I try to build some friendships that way. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what creed, religion, culture, race. I just love to talk to anybody who is willing to talk with me, because you never know who is hiding the most incredible, inspiring, hilarious, horrifying, out of this world stories and experiences in history. So that's a big takeaway from being a funeral director. So I will actually wrap this up right now because I know I've been yammering on forever and going off tangent about everything, but I hope this at least gives you an introduction as far as what to expect if you want to be a funeral director, what the lifestyle is like, what the schooling is like, and just why it's such an amazing special profession. It's hard, but it is so worth it. So that's all for now. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe below so that way you can keep track of when my new videos come out, because I will be doing more videos on the funeral profession. I'm also a certified crematory operator, so if you have any questions about anything I've covered in this video or anything that I haven't covered, please comment below. Let me know what it is. If you have any questions about the cremation process, ask below. Again, no question is too weird. Believe me, funeral directors have heard everything. They've heard it all. Nothing is weird to us, and better than having heard it all, we've seen it all. We have the stories. We have some really interesting insights to a lot of aspects of both life and death. So if you have any questions, again, ask them below. If you are too embarrassed to publicly ask the question because you think it is a little too weird, go ahead and email me. I'll put my email in the description below, so that way you can shoot me an email and I will keep your username or identity private if I address the question in an upcoming video. And also, head up my Instagram. I finally started an Instagram account because I want to be like the cool kids and show off pictures of my cats. So that's all today. Thank you again so much for watching. If you've made it this far, I commend you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Ciao.